Discussion time has been set at the end of this session, so if you can save up your interesting questions to after the third paper has been given. Lena will be a recorded presentation. She won't be present here. I think she's still in Warsaw. But the first speaker today is Vincenzo de Martino, who's talking about the search for dramaturgical coherence in the performing piano works by Čiurlionis of musical cycles. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for gathering on a Saturday morning. So, as it was said, my presentation will focus on the aspect of cyclicality in piano works by Mikalojos Konstantinas Čiurlionis. We will focus on how to ensure cyclical consistency, let's say, in the moment of a performance. The case study will be the series of preludes from VL 309 to 313, also known as the unrecognized cycle number 10 C etude in recent time. Of course, the creative work of Mikalojos Konstantinas Čiurlionis is vast and offers a kaleidoscope of images, tune, and sensation unified by his very specific syncretic view of the world. And one of the most debated aspects up to date is how the principle behind the composition process of is more than 300 piano works. Several of these pieces remain unfinished, as we know, and they are characterized by significant differences in form and style. And despite being composed over a relatively short time span, which is approximately between 1896 and 1909, when is final monumental fugue in B minor appeared. And central to our discussion of today is the question of whether some of this work were conceived, namely, as part of larger cycles. Now the question arises to understand what constitutes the definition of a musical cycle in Čiurlionis can lead to varied interpretations depending on the criteria applied to establish the links between different works. This can be harmonic or thematic unity, complex intervallic relationships, and also various trends of expanded tonality, symmetry, and proportions, as well as aspect of seriality, as observable in his later works too. And of course, the contribution of Čiurlionis' editor is significant in this area. Several of them operated comparative analysis searching for congruity between different compositions based on chronological, structural, and stylistic criteria, which led to the idea of groupable works in light of very similar cyclicality. So this is evident in some of the publications by, of course, I mentioned some of the most significant, Jadwiga Čiurlionytė, Vytautas Landsbergis, Darius Kučinskas, bringing together like works by Čiurlionis in light of supposed cyclicality of them. Also, of course, based on the indication that the composer himself sometimes left us. In recent times, Rimantas Janelauskas, as we know, provided a very extensive study in this area. His unrecognized Mikalojos Konstantinas Čiurlionis musical cycle stands as a comprehensive examination of the Čiurlionis piano composition in light of the cyclicality revealed through a series of recurring characteristics that the musicologist pointed out. Nevertheless, a study from a performer's perspective, focusing on building this coherent unity in when performing Čiurlionis' composition as musical cycle, so enabling the listener to experience them as a cohesive narrativity rather than disconnected works, seem to be necessary to me, and that's why I prepared this presentation. Now we will explore the dimension of interpreting Čiurlionis' pianistic work in light of narrativity. As we know, instrumental music can convey narrativity. And this is very evident when talking about 19th and 20th century music. In general, like generation of composer found different ways to to convey this necessity of putting music narrativity together. Of course, there is this relationship between the music drama and the program music, which are two aspects of this, two sides of this same coin. And however, it must be emphasized that referring to extra musical subject, as it happens, for example, in program music, is not necessarily narrativity in music, because narration, as you know, now there are a few quotes that will help me to explain this concept. Narration is a logical process involving not only the representations of events, but also disclosing their temporal causal relationship. So, as George Wilson argues, a genuine narrative requires the representation of minimum two events and some indication of the order in time of the events which are being depicted. Also, Carroll observes the basis of narrative connection is that earlier events and state of affair are at least causally necessary conditions or contribution thereto for the occurrence of later events in relevant stories. What does this mean? Taking Čiurlionis and recognized cycle as an example, we can see that, for example, in the sea etudes, which is clearly referring to the sea, so the composer, as we know, provide a vivid representation of the sea through recurring stylistic feature. However, this pictorial intent is not sufficient to convey a narration in this logical sense of events being narrated. In other words, the musical depiction of the sea does not imply its involvement in this narrative dynamic, and that's where the performer input will come in, as I will explain. However, in these cases, more than a narrative model where events are being narrated, we can apply a dramatic model. As James Levinson notes, a dramatic rather than a narrative model may better apply in this case. Why? What does it mean? Levinson drew from Aristotle's Poetics, recalling the distinction according to which in a narrative model events are being narrated, namely, whereas in a dramatic model they are being enacted. Based on this, the core of representation in Čiurlionis and recognized cycle number 10 may be not the narration of sea-related, let's say, event, but rather we have the music that impersonates this characteristic of the sea, evoking the sea through selected musical devices. In other words, there are no events being narrated, but instead music is the agent of the representation of this familiar subject to the composer as it was the sea. So guaranteeing this sort of thematic unit based on the interconnection between these musical elements, which are all more or less, to different extents, evoking the sea. Of course, the relationship between the sea and Čiurlionis is very well known to all of us, as well as between the sea and cyclical thinking. These two things are recurring elements in Čiurlionis' artistic output, as it's notable in the Sonata of the Sea. This is a painting cycle, where the composer pursues the idea of rhythm and movement, same as in music, but in the field of visual arts. And of course, the works that now we're going to analyze, the works belonging to the unrecognized cycle number 10, which were composed in Druskininke and Warsaw between the summer of autumn of 1907, were often grouped based on their thematic unit, that is the representation of the sea, even before Janelauska's concept of unrecognized cycle appeared. We have Čiurlionite's edition when they appear as part of Opus 26 and Opus 27 in a row, while Vytautas Landsbergis included them in the set of 8 works under the title Storm and Depths, Audros ir Gelmes in Lithuanian. And as Landsbergis also observed, in the same year of where these pieces came to light, Čiurlionis completed the orchestration of his symphonic poem, The Sea. that we could all appreciate in public some weeks ago. That was very powerful. And also worked on his painting cycle Zodiacus. So further evidencing this profound interpretation of different art form when it comes to the sea. Also, besides spiritual and dimension and this idea of cosmic depth that was very close to Čiurlionio. Now, seeking this coherence in performing works of Čiurlionio as musical cycles, such as in this unrecognized cycle number 10, where the element of the sea is prominent, of course, the understanding of the sea as a factor of thematic unit is obviously fundamental. As previously mentioned, characteristic of music gives both thematic unity and semantic congruity in this sense. However, this does not necessarily imply a sense of cyclical wholeness. And that's where the performer input comes in. So I personally performed this cycle, among other things, by Čiurlionis, and I've elaborated a series of expedients that can help the performer to deliver this sense of cyclical consistency, which is as very much explored and theorized by Jan Olaskas, Landsbergis, and other illustrious Čiurlionio scholar. But as I said, from a performance side, something has to be added. For instance, now we have the end of the VL 309, which is, I would have loved to play it, but the time is not helping us in the sense. We can see this, it's slow moving prelude, which ends even slower as the indication of morendo suggests. And the whole prelude has no climax. It's a series of dissonant chords flowing one into another, also giving the impression of floating above water surface, thanks to the use of pedal and other pianistic expedients. By contrast, we have this Allegro risoluto, which is the following VL 312, which is a thunderous chromatic fast march. And now, how we connect all this? Of course, in my case, I thought about the tempi relationship. If the second piece will be performed exactly as alla breve of the first, it is possible to trick the audience into believing they are listening to a unique cycle with this sense of sudden contrast, but still, the relationship of the tempi in this case can help to guarantee the cyclical consistency. Other example, from the following 312 to 310. The linkage could appear problematic, as it's necessary to switch, again, from this very thunderous prelude to another very slow, free-flowing, also similarly floating, giving this idea of floating above water. And these sinus chromatic lines that go through the whole piece. You can only appreciate the very beginning, but this is a characteristic of this piece. Now, here, in this case, tonal attraction between the upper note of the final A major chords. There is no key, but that's A note in the first excerpt on the left. So this upper note also acts as the second grade of the G minor scale on which the second prelude is based. So it gives a sense, this note can be used to give a sense of going to the third grade of the, which is B flat of the G minor chord, which appear in the following prelude. How? Of course, this upper note can be made to resonate longer with the pedal, and than the rest of the chord, so that it's perceived as a sort of bridge to the following harmonic context. I still have a few minutes, and also 310 to 311. Here it's easier. We have similar metrical structure. This allows, which is 4 on 2 instead of 4 of 4. That means 8 notes sextuplets instead of semiquaver triplets. So in this case, tempi relationship can be very efficient by simply switching from this prelude to the other by maintaining similar tempo relationship. From 311 to 313, of course, this can be powerfully rendered through gestuality. This final chord can be very dramatically enhanced, also like doing this thing that the performers do and lifting their arms very powerfully and thunderously falling on the following chord, which is also a very fast, stormy prelude. There is this alternance in this cycle, which also help, in fact, to guarantee this coherence. And of course, the suspended conclusion of the final prelude is just a moment where the time stops, and this ensure and helps just to come back to the reprise of VL 309 in just out of this how to say even though there is no tonal relation, with just this suspended conclusion actually makes the performer job easier in this sense. You just let the music, the sound fade away with the pedal, and you start again with the final prelude, which is, as I said, the reprise of 309. This is more or less, of course, this would require more time, but as I said, cyclical consistency from a performance side can be guaranteed by tonal relations, metrical relations, and also performance input, like performer gestuality. It is an original interpretive process of the performer, which involves combining the information given in the score, also from the study of the musicological literature related to the score, with their own artistic intuition. So these tables summarize some of the possibilities that I have imagined, and they can be also appreciated in my performance of this cycle. If you will be interested, it's available on YouTube fully. And here's some bibliography. And to conclude, I would say a similar approach can be applied to construct analogous relationship between other works by Čiurlionis, but also works by other composers, which are part of bigger sets, like, for instance, Chopin Etudes Opus 10, Opus 25, Schumann Novelletten, and some preludes by Claude Debussy, to mention a few of them. So this idea, of course, finds application in a vast realm of pianistic literature overall. So, thank you.